Hello everyone, welcome back to another Navbar tech tutorial. Now in this video you are going to learn how to create a complete website from scratch using just HTML and CSS. Now it doesn't matter if you are a beginner in HTML and CSS, I'm going to explain everything step by step without skipping any step, okay? So in this video, first of all, we're going to learn how to create this hero section. It's going to have this text right here, discover the world one journey at a time. We are going to learn how to create these links right here and this logo. Next, we're going to create this explore section right here, and you can, when you hover on this image, it's going to show the location. For this one, it's going to be New York, this one is going to be Dubai, then this one is going to be Paris, okay? After that, we're going to create this modern about us section. You can see how good this about us section is looking with this nice background image and this overlay. And when we hover on the lemon button, you can see that smooth over effect right there. After that, we're going to create the latest article section. We're going to see the latest articles or blog posts from this website, okay? After that, we're going to create the contact us section, and in this contact us section, we're going to create this contact us form, this info details right here. Also, we're going to learn how to add a map to a website, a map that's going to point to whatever location you want it to point to, okay? After that, we're going to have this footer right here that's going to say copyright 2025 Egbon Tech YouTube channel. Now, we're not going to stop there. We're going to ensure that this website is fully responsive. Whatever device you view this website on is going to be fully responsive. And also, when we click on this hamburger menu icon, it's going to open up this menu right here. When we click on it again, it's going to close up this menu. And you also learn how to check your website on various devices to check if they're actually responsive. Right now, I'm checking this on iPad mini. You can use whatever device you want to actually check if this website is completely responsive. Now, if you are excited about this project, smash the like button and leave a comment below. It's going to help the YouTube algorithm to push this content to more people just like you who are going to find it helpful, and basically just consider it as a little way of you supporting the channel. And lastly, if you've not subscribed, ensure you do that and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on the next project we're going to build together on this channel. Let's dive into it. So I've basically created my index.html file, and inside this index.html file, I have this boilerplate code right here, and also I have this link right here, that's linking this index.html file to this style.css file up here. And inside this style.css file, I have this basic styles right here, and also up here I have these color variables right here that we're going to make use of for in this project. And also I have a folder right here, an images folder right here that contain all the images we are going to make use of for this project. Now these images are going to be available for you, so I'm going to leave a link for you in the description below so you can get these images, okay? And before we can start working on this project, we actually need two things. First of all, we need Font Awesome CDN link, and also we need Google Font. So I'll go to my browser, I'll just search for Font Awesome CDN link, Font Awesome CDN. That's going to bring me right here. I'm going to click on the first link I'm going to find, which is cdngs.com. I'll click on this link. And this link is going to bring me right here to cdngs.com, and we have different Font Awesome CDN links right here. I'm going to copy the first one. This is all.min.js. I'll just copy the HTML tag for this one. I'll head to my index.html file. Up here in my header tag, I'll just paste that right here. I've added Font Awesome to our project. Now we have to get Google Font. So I head back to my web browser. I'm going to search for Google Font. Just go to fonts.google.com. That's going to bring me right here to this website. I'm going to search for the fonts I want. You can basically search for any font you want from Google, but I want Poppins. I'll search for Poppins, and you can see Poppins right here. So I'll just click on that. Then I'm going to click on Get Font. It's going to bring me right here. I don't want to download the font. I want to get the embed code. So I'll click on Get Embed Code. Then I want the CSS import, not the HTML link. I'll just copy this. Head back to my style.css file. I'll paste that up here. Next, we can start working on our project. So I'll just close up this left sidebar. Head back to my index.html file. Inside this index.html file, I'm going to create a section. This section is going to have a class of hero section. Now inside this section, we're going to have two items. First of all, we're going to have our Navbar. We're going to have our hero content, okay? So I'm going to create a nav tag. Then under this nav tag, I'll create a div. This div is going to have a class of hero content. Sorry, spell that content correctly. Inside this nav, first of all, I have a p tag that's going to be acting as our logo. This p tag is simply going to say go beyond. And this beyond is going to be wrapped inside the span tag. I want to add unique styles to it. So I'll paste that right here. And I'll give it a class. I'll give it logo. After this p tag, we're going to have another list. This another list is going to have a class of nav links. And we are going to have an li tag in there. Each of these li tags is going to have an anchor tag in them. For now, this anchor tag are not going to go anywhere, so I'll put hash in there. This particular one is going to say home. I'll just drag this down multiple times. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next one is going to be explore. Then we're going to have articles. Then we're going to, spell the articles correctly. Then we're going to have about. And lastly, we're going to have contacts. Okay, and this first anchor tag is going to have a class of active because it's going to be the home page. So we're going to have this as our active link. And to actually preview this project, I'm going to click on Go Live because I have Visual Studio Code Live Server extension installed in my Visual Studio Code. So I just click on Go Live. And that's going to open this project up in my browser. And you can see those items we just added right here, go beyond, and those links we just added. Okay, so let's start applying styles to this element. So I'll go to my style.css file. Down here, I'm going to say dot. I'll copy that class, that hero section class. I'll just copy this class right here, hero section. I head to my style.css file. I'll just paste that right here. Now remember that in our hero section, we're going to have a background image in the hero section. Also, we're going to have a background image overlay. Okay, so let's do that. So I'll just go back to my style.css. So first of all, I'm going to give this hero section a height. I'll give it 100 VH. I'll give it a background of linear gradient. I'll make use of this color right here, RGBA 223686. Then the opacity is 0.5. I'll repeat that again. But this time around, the opacity is going to be 0.3. After that, we're going to add our background image. Now, to add the background image in CSS, you're going to make use of the URL. Then, in between this opening and closing bracket, you're going to add the path to the image. Now, where is this image located? We're going to point into our images folder. Then, inside our images folder, we're going to see an image called hero background.jpg. So, I'll click on that. I'll save that, head back to the web page, and you can see those, and you can see that background image right here. Okay. We have to actually add more styles to this image to make it look way better. So I'll give the image a background size. I'll give it cover. I'll give it a background position. I'll use center. I'll save that. And that's going to ensure that the image is at the center, absolute center of the web page. Okay. So now that we've actually gotten this background image, we can actually start styling the navigation bar. So down here in my standard CSS, I want to target the nav tag. That's this nav tag right here that wraps around our navigation bar. This nav tag right here. I'll give this nav tag a display. I'll give it flex. I'll give it a padding. Top and bottom, we're going to use 0. Left and right, we're going to use 3%. Now, that padding top and bottom of 0.3%, that was going to do is that it's going to ensure that we have a padding. Top and bottom, we're going to have a padding of 0 in this nav file, but left and right, we're going to have a padding of 3%. You can see the left hand side right here, we have a space between these two items. Okay, so I just give the two items justify contents. I'll say space between, and that's going to add space between these two items. Okay, you can see right now that this go beyond is right here, and these other links are right here. I'll give the navbar a height of 60 pixels, and then I'll give it an align items of center. I'll save that. So next, I want to target that p tag that's acting as our logo. So down here, I'm going to say nav.logo. Remember, we'll give the p tag a class name of logo. Okay, so that's how we're going to target. We're going to target it using its class name of logo. I'll give this a font size of 1.5 rem. I'll give it a font width of 600, and then I'm going to give it a color of white. Now I'm going to target the span tag inside this logo, so I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here, target the span tag in there. I'll give this a background color of primary color. That's this color right here. This color that is actually looking like a pink color. I'll give it a border radius of 5 pixels, 15 pixels, and a padding 5 pixels top and bottom, 8 pixels left and right. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. You can see that this logo is actually styled, and I just noticed that we've not applied our poppins font to our web page. Let's quickly do that. So up here, I just say I want to apply this poppins font. So I'm going to say font family. I'm going to use poppins. Then the fallback value is going to be sans serif. I'll save that. When we head back to the web, you're going to see that that font has been applied. Okay. So next, we're going to start styling the links. Okay. Remember, we gave the links. We gave this under this a class of nav links. So we're going to target that class. So I'll copy this. I had to my style of CSS. So I'll just scroll down. I'll just paste that right here. I'll give this a display of flex to ensure that the links are arranged horizontally. Then I'll give it a list style of none to get rid of the bullet points. Then I'm going to target the anchor tag inside the link. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste that right here. Then I'll give the anchor tag a text decoration. I'll give it none. That's going to get rid of the line underneath these anchor tags. We'll give it a margin, top and bottom of 0, left and right 20 pixels, a color of white. Then I'll give it I'm going to give it a text transform of uppercase, and this is going to ensure that all the letters in the link are going to be of uppercase. That's capital letters. And finally, we're going to give the link a font weight 500. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. You can see these links are actually styled. Okay. So next, we're going to add a hover property to this link. When we hover on this link, we want it to have this color right here. Okay. So I'll just copy this. I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Then on hover of this link, I want to give this link a color of primary color. Okay. And also you have to actually add styles to the active link. Remember, we gave this first link a class of active, so we're going to target that class. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste that right here. Then I'll target the active class in there. I'll give this a color of text color primary. When I head back to the web, you can see that we have that active link, and when I hover on this link, you can see that hover effect right there. So next, we're going to start working on the hero content. Okay, so I'll go back to my index.html file. Inside this hero contents container, we're going to create a h2 tag right here, and inside this h2 tag, we're going to have this text in there: discover the world one journey at a time. So I'm going to apply styles to this. So I'll just copy this. I head to my style of CSS file. I'll save the file to my style of CSS file. Down here, I'm going to say dot hero section dot. I'll paste that class name right here. Now I want to give this hero content a height. I want to say calculate. Then I want to subtract the height of the navbar from 100 VH. Okay, I want to give the hero content 100 VH height minus the height of the navigation bar. So I'm going to give this a height of 100 VH minus the height of the navbar, because we give the navbar a height of 60 pixels. After that, I'll give it a display of flex, align items of center, justify content. I'm going to use center. I'll give the hero content a maximum width of 1200 pixels, a width of 90%, and last, I'll give it a margin of auto. Okay, so now I want to target the h2 tag inside this hero content. So I'll copy this, I'll paste that right here. For the h2 tag, we are going to give it a font size of 3.5 rem, a color of white. Then we also give it a text align of center. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. You can see that h2 text right here: discover the world one journey at a time. And with that, we are done with the hero section. Now we have to ensure the hero section is actually responsive. Now when we go to our developer tools, now to actually go to your developer tools, just right click on your web page, and go to inspect. Right here, you're able to view your website on different devices. Right now I'm on Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus. I just go to responsive. With this responsive, I can increase and decrease the screen size as I want. And you can see right now that when we reduce the screen size of this web page, you're going to notice that the web page is highly unresponsive. So we have to actually ensure it's responsive. So what I'm going to do, I'll create a new file. I'll call this file responsive .css. I'll just link that file to my index.html file up here. So up here, I'll just drag this down. Then instead of style.css file, I'm going to responsive.css. Inside this responsive.css, I'm going to have two breakpoints. My first breakpoint is going to be 768 pixels. And it's going to be for tablets. I'll comment that off. Then my next breakpoint is going to be for 600 pixels, and this one is going to be for mobile phones. Then up here, I'll create a media query at media. Maximum width of 768 pixels. Now just copy this. I'll paste this right here. And I'll change this 768 pixels to 600 pixels. Now first, we have to work on ensuring the navigation bar is actually responsive. So what we're going to do is that for screens less than 768 pixels, we're going to create the mobile menu. So I'll just go to my responsive.css file. Up here, I'm going to say nav. First of all, I want to position the nav bar at the top of the web page. I'll give the nav a position. I'll give it fixed. And I'll give it a top of 0, left of 0, a width of 100%, background color of white, and lastly, I'll give it a z-index of 100. That way, no other items can overlap it in the web page. Okay. When I head back to the web page, I'm going to notice that the nav bar is now fixed at the top of the web page. So we actually have to change the color of the link to black. Remember that initially it has a color of white, but when we change the background of the nav bar to white for mobile devices for screens less than 768 pixels, we're going to give that link a color of black, or basically a darker color so you can see it clearly. So down here, I'm going to say .nav links. I want to target the anchor tag in there. I'll give them a color of this hex color right here. Save that. Now when we head back to the web, you can see that we can actually see these links better. Okay. Now that the nav bar is actually positioned at the top of the web page, you have to actually position these links underneath the nav bar. That way, when we reduce the screen size, the links are going to be arranged vertically down underneath this nav bar. Okay, so let's do that. So to do that, we're going to target the links this time. I'll copy these links. I'll paste that up here. I'll give these links a position of fixed, and I'll give them a top of 60 pixels. And the reason I'm using a top of 60 pixels is that it's because the nav bar is actually 60 pixels of height. So we're giving the nav links a position of 60 pixels top. That's going to ensure that it's going to be positioned from the top of the web page by 60 pixels, and it's going to be positioned underneath the navigation bar, just immediately after the nav bar. I'll give it a left of 0 and a width of 100%. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. You can see those links right here. They are positioned underneath the navigation bar. Okay, but we're going to add more styles to it. First of all, we want the links to be arranged vertically down, so we're going to add a flex direction to it. So give this a flex direction of column. Background color, we're going to use white. Then we'll give it a text align. Give all the items, all the links, a text align of center. I want them to be arranged at the center. And last, we're going to add a padding, top and bottom of 15 pixels, left and right of 0. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. You can see these links are actually looking better. Okay, now we have to start the individual links now. So we'll give each of the links a display property of block. Then we'll give them a padding, top and bottom of 15 pixels, left and right of 0. Save that. Head back to the web page. Now this is actually looking really good. So next, we're going to add the hamburger menu icon that's going to be at the right hand side. We're going to click to actually open up this menu. Okay, so I'll go back to my index.html file. After this, on another list, I'm going to create a div. I'll give this div a class of hamburger menu. And inside this div, we're going to have 3 spans. So I'll just copy this hamburger menu right here. I head to my style.css file. Just scroll up. I'll paste that right here. We're going to give this a cursor of pointer, and then we're going to give it a display of none because we don't want this to be visible for small screen devices. Okay, then we're going to copy this, head to our responsive.css file. I'll just paste that at 768 pixels. Then at 768 pixels, we're going to give it a display of block. We want it to only be visible when the screen size is less than 768 pixels. So down here, I'm going to say dot hamburger menu dot target the span in there. I'll give each of the span a width of 25 pixels, a height of 3 pixels, a margin top and bottom of 5 pixels, left and right of 0. We'll give it a background color of dark gray. I'll save that. And when we head back to the web page, you're going to notice that we cannot actually see that hamburger menu right here that we just created. That's because by default, span tag has a display of inline, okay, which means we cannot actually see them unless there's a content in them. So to actually see them without having a content, we're going to give this a display of block. I'll save that. When we head back to the web, you can actually see it now. So next, we are going to actually ensure this logo is responsive too. So we're going to copy the logo style. Just copy the logo, copy this right here. I add to my responsive of CSS. I'll paste that right here. We'll give the logo a font size of 1.2 WEM. And so we're going to give it a color of this hex color right here. This hex color will be used for the color for our links. Okay, save that. I won't head back to the web page. See that this is actually looking better. And the span is actually having a color of that dark gray too for mobile device. So what I'm going to do, I'll just go to my style of CSS fair. Down here, I'll give the span a color of white. That's going to ensure that even when I apply that color to the nav logo, the span is going to have a color of white for mobile device. Yeah, cool. So what we are going to work on is that we don't want this mobile menu to be open by default. We want this menu to only be open when the user clicks on this button right here, this hamburger menu button. Okay, so what we are going to do, we're going to give this a display of none. So I head back to my responsive.css. Where's the nav links? I'm going to give this a display. I'll give it none. I'll save that. I want to head back to the web. You can notice that we cannot actually see those links right here. We can't see those links. So we're going to create a new class down here. We'll call this class menu open. Okay, and this menu open is going to have a display of block. I'll save that. Now, when we take this menu button, I'll take this menu button class. I'll head to my index.html file. I'll paste that right here. Then when I save that, you're going to notice that the menu is actually going to be open. So what we are going to do, we are going to use JavaScript to add and dynamically add and remove the class. Okay, so I'll go back to my index.html. I'll just get rid of this. Then down here, I'm going to create a script tag. Just before this body tag, I'll create a script tag. In between this opening and closing script tag, this is where we're going to write all our JavaScript code. So we're going to target two items. First of all, we're going to target the hamburger menu, and then we're going to target the links. Okay, so down here, I'm going to say const. I'm going to set this to a variable. I'll call the variable menu button. Menu button is equals to documents dot query selector. I'm going to target that hamburger menu class right here. This hamburger menu class. So I just copy this. I'll paste that right here. So next, we're going to target the links. So down here, I'm going to say const. I'll set it to a variable. I'll call the variable links is equals to documents dot query selector. I'm going to use that class name, that nav links class name, nav links. Okay. Then down here, I'm going to add an event listener to the bottom. So menu button dot add event listener. When someone clicks on the button, I basically just want to run a function called open menu. Spell that menu correctly. Then down here, I'll create that function open menu. All we just want to do, we want to say links dot class list dot toggle. We want JavaScript to toggle the class, that's add and remove the class toggle. Then we just copy the class from our responsive.css, this menu open class. I'll copy this. I'll just paste that right here. Okay, then I'll save that. And when I head back to the web page, when I click on this, it's going to open up this menu. When I click on it again, it's going to close it back up. All right, cool. So next, we have to ensure that the hero content is actually responsive too. So for the hero section, first of all, I want to give it a height of auto. Remember that we gave this hero section, just scroll up, we gave this hero section a height of 100 views. So now I want to give it a height of auto. So I'll copy that. I'll head to my responsive.css. I'll just paste that right here. I'll give this a height. I'll give it auto. Now paste that right here again. I'll target the hero content.hero content. Then I'll give this hero content a height. I'll give it 80. VH. I'll save that. I want to head back to the web. I'm going to start this content now has a height of 80 VH. Because for mobile devices, for small screen devices like small tablets and mobile phones, I don't want the hero section, this background image, to stretch to the bottom. Okay, I want it to stretch to about this area right here. That's why I'm giving it a height of 80 VH. So next, we are going to ensure this H2 tags are actually responsive too. So I just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. That's a H2. Remember, we give this a font size. Initially, we give the H2 tag of the hero content a font size of 3.5 rem. So we'll just reduce it to about, give the font size to about 3 rem. Then I'll just copy this again. I'll paste that for mobile phones this time around. I'll give it a font size of 2.5 rem. I'll save that. I want to head back to the web. You can see this is actually responsive. I want to reduce the screen size. You notice that the H2 tags are actually going to be fully responsive. When we take this to iPhone 12 Pro, you notice that this actually looks really good. So with that, we are basically done with the hero section. So next, we're going to start working on the explore section right here. Okay. So I'll go back to my index.html file. I just wrap up this section right here. This hero section. I'm done in this hero section. Underneath this hero section, I'll create another section. And this section is going to have a class of explore section. Inside this explore section, we're going to have a div in there that's going to have a class of header. Inside this header, we're going to have a H2 tag in there. This header is simply going to say explore popular locations. After the H2 tag, I'm going to create a div underneath it that's going to have a class of line. And I'll copy this header class. Now this is going to be a general style. So I'll just go to my style of CSS file down here. I'm going to say general style. These are styles that are going to be used by different sections of the web page. So I just comment this off. So I'll paste that right here because I'm going to reuse this header for other sections. First of all, I'll give the header a text transform of uppercase. We'll give it a font size of 1.3 rem. And lastly, a color of dark gray. So next, we're going to target the div underneath the H2 tag. So down here, I'm going to say .header. Then I'll target the div which has a class of line. We'll give this line a height of 5 pixels. We'll give it a width of 80 pixels. Background color, we're going to use primary. Give it a border radius of 10 pixels. And lastly, we're going to give it a margin bottom of 30 pixels. I'll save that. Now we head back to the web page. You're going to notice that we have that header right here. Okay. So next, we're going to start styling the explore section. So I'll just go to my HTML. I'll just copy this class right here. I'll go to my style of CSS file. I'll scroll up. Then I'm going to say this is going to be the styles for my explore section. So I'll just comment that off. Then down here, I'll paste that right here. Sorry, add a dot at the back there. We'll give this a padding top and bottom. It's going to have a padding of 40 pixels. Left and right, it's going to have a padding of 0. We'll give the explore section a maximum width of 1200 pixels, a width of 90%, and lastly, we're going to give it a margin of auto. I'll save that. Now when I head back to the web page, I'm going to notice that the width we just added has been applied to this container. This explore section container. So I'll go back to my index.html file. Now after this header div, I'll create another div. This div is going to have a class of gallery. And inside this gallery, we're going to have 3 items. And each of them is going to have a class of gallery item. Each of them is going to have an image. This particular image is going to go into the images folder. And it's going to point to New York.jpg. Then after that, I'll create a div. This div is going to have a class of overlay. And inside this div, I'm going to have a h3 tag in there. I'm simply going to say New York. Now just copy this and drag this down multiple times. 1, 2. The other text for this first one is going to be New York. And the second image is going to be Dubai, Dubai.jpg, and the other text is going to be Dubai. Then the h3 tag is simply going to say Dubai. I'll scroll down. Then the last one is going to be Paris. The other text is simply going to say Paris. Then the h3 tag is simply going to say Paris. Paris. I'll save that. And when we head back to the web, you're going to notice those items we just added are inside of the web page. Okay, so let's start actually applying styles to them. So I go back to my style of CSS file. Down here, I'm going to say dots explore section dots gallery. I'll give this a display. I'll give it grid. We're going to add a grid template columns of repeats, auto, fit, min, max, 250 pixels, and 1 FR. The last, we're going to add a gap of 20 pixels. After that, we're going to target the image. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. And I'll target the gallery item. So gallery item. I'll target the image inside the gallery item. Now we already gave the container a grid display, so we just have to tell the image to occupy 100%. We'll give it a width of 100%. We'll give it a display of block, a height of 500 pixels, and lastly, object fit. We're going to use cover. I'll save that. I want to head back to the web page. You're going to notice that these images are actually styled and they look really good. But we don't want this text to be right here. What we want is we want this text to be positioned inside of this container. Okay, that's what we want. So let's actually style this overlay too. So I'll target the gallery overlay. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll say dot overlay. Sorry, overlay. I'll give this a position of absolute, top of 0, left of 0, width of 100%, and height of 100%. Background color, we're going to make use of RGBA. That's this hex color right here we use for our background image overlay. I'll just increase the opacity to 0.7. The text color, we want it to have a color of white. Then we'll give this overlay display of flex, a justified content of center. Align items, we're going to give it center. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. You're going to notice that we cannot actually see our overlay. Our overlay is actually positioned in our home page. No position absolute to these gallery items right here. The reason for that is because this gallery item right now has a position of static, and when an element in the HTML document has a position of static, you cannot position an element absolute to it. Okay, so to ensure we can actually position this overlay to these gallery items, what we are going to do, we're going to give the gallery items. I'll just copy this. I'll paste that up here. I'll give the gallery item a position of relative. I'll save that. And we'll head back to the web. You're going to see that they are now positioned absolute to the gallery item. Instead of having this text at the center, I want it to be at the end right here. So let me just give this align items. I'll give it flex end. I'll save that. And that's going to ensure it's going to be positioned at the end, at the bottom right here. Cool. So next we're going to apply some styles to the H3 tag. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll just target the H3 tag inside this overlay. We'll give this a font size of 1.5 rem. And I'll give it a margin bottom of 30 pixels. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. That's actually looking way better. And also just add a cursor of pointer to each of these gallery items. So just give it a cursor. Give it a cursor of pointer. I'll save that. Yeah. Now by default, we don't want this overlay to be shown to the UI. Okay, we want to only actually see the location of these images when we hover on it. Like when we hover on this New York, then it's going to show us New York. When we hover on Dubai, it's going to show this overlay that this is Dubai. Okay, that's what we want to do. So to do that, I'm going to give this, I'll give this overlay, I'll give it an opacity of 0. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web, you're going to notice that we cannot actually see the overlay anymore. So what we are going to do is that we're going to copy this. I'll paste that up here. Then I'm going to say on hover of the gallery item. When someone hovers on the gallery item, I want to add styles to the overlay. So I'll give the overlay an opacity of 1. I'll save that. Now when I hover on these items, you can see that overlay right here. And also when we hover on the gallery item, we want the image to actually zoom out a bit too. So what we are going to do, we'll just copy this. We'll paste that underneath here. Then we're going to say on hover of this gallery item, I want to add styles to the image. I'll give the image a transform scale of 1.1. Okay, that way when we hover on this image, it's actually going to scale out. You can see right here, it's actually going to scale out. So, but we have a problem when we actually zoom. This image is actually overflowing the gallery item container. So we just give the gallery item container, give it overflow of hidden. Okay, that way when we hover, you can see right now the image actually zoom out. But the over effects are very fast, so we're gonna add a transition to them. Okay, so first of all, I'm gonna add a transition to the overlay. Let's add overlay. Add a transition opacity. Opacity. The opacity pop fill 0.5 is in out. I also add a transition to the image. Where's the image? Right here. I give it a transition of transform 0.5 seconds is in out. I'll save that. I want to head back to the web. You can see how smooth these hover effects are actually looking. Okay, the transition for the overlay is still kind of fast. The opacity, let me check why that is. That's because we use 0.5. We didn't add seconds to it. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. I see how smooth that's looking. That's actually more smoother. So we are basically done actually creating the Explore section. So now we have to actually ensure this is responsive. So I just go to my developer tools. And you can see this is actually fully responsive. All we just have to do is reduce the font size of this header. Okay. So I'll go to my style of CSS file, scroll down. Initially, we gave this header a font size of 1.3 rem. So I'll just reduce our font size. I'll copy this. I'll head to my responsive of CSS. I'll reduce it for mobile devices. I'll paste that right here. I'll give this a font size. I'll give it 1.1 rem. I'll save that. When I head back to the web, you can see this is actually smaller for mobile devices. And with that, we are basically done with the Explore section. Okay. So next, we have to start working on the About section. This About Us section right here is going to have this background image. So I head back to my index.html file. Let's go back to the index.html file. We'll just wrap this up. We are done with the Explore section. We'll create another section. This section is going to have a class of About section. Inside this About section, we're going to have a div that's going to have a class of About container. Inside this About container, we're also going to have an header. So I just copy the header from this one. I'll copy this. I'll wrap this back up. And I'll paste that right here. Now after this header the container, I'm going to create another div. This div is going to have a class of About details. Inside this About details, we're going to have a paragraph tag that's going to have this paragraph in there. Just format documents to arrange this better. After this paragraph tag, we're going to have an anchor tag that's not going to go anywhere. And inside this anchor tag, I'm going to have two items. First of all, I'm going to have a span in there. This span is simply going to say learn more. And after this span, I'm going to have an icon. This icon is simply going to have a class of arrow right. I'll save that. And I head back to the web page. You can see those items we just added right here. And we've not updated the header. So I'll go back to my index.html file. Instead of this explore popular location, it's going to be About Us. Yeah, that's been updated. Now let's start actually applying styles to this About Us section. So I'll go to my style of CSS file. First of all, I'll copy this About section. I'll copy this class name. We're going to head to our style of CSS file. Up here, I'll just paste that right here. Then I'll say this is going to be styles for the About section. Then down here, I'll paste that right here. I'll give this a padding. Top and bottom, I want it to have a padding of 40 pixels. Left and right, a padding of 60 pixels. And also the About section is going to have a background that's going to have a linear gradient. The first color is going to be RGBA 22, 36, 86 with opacity of 0.7. So I'll just copy this. I'll repeat that again. I'll paste that right here. And the opacity this time is going to be 0.5. After that, I'll add the comma. I'm going to add the background image there. Now for the background image, it's going to point into the images folder. It's going to point to about background.jpg. I'll save that. Now we'll head back to the web. You can see we have a background right here. Let's just add two properties to it. Scroll up and copy those two properties from our hero section. This background says cover and background position of center. I'll just scroll all the way down. I'll paste that right here. Okay, I'll save that. Now we'll head back to the web page. You can see our background image has been applied to the web page. And you will notice that the header, initially we gave this header a dark gray color, okay? But for this background, this dark gray color is not going to cut it, okay? So what we are going to do we're going to add an inline style to this one. We'll give it an inline style. We'll give this a style of color. We'll just use white. I'll save that. That way, this particular H2 tag is going to have a color of white. Alright, cool. So next we're going to style the about container. Okay, so I'll go back to my index.html file. I'll just copy this. I head to my style.css file. Down here, I'm going to say dot about section dot I'll paste that right here. I give this a maximum width of 1200 pixels, a width of 90%, and margin I'm going to give it out to. I'll save that. Then so I'm going to target the about details, okay, because I want this item not to occupy up to the end of this container. I want it to occupy 50% of this about container, okay. So I'll just target it. So I'll copy this. I'll paste that right here. Now I'll copy the class for the about. This about details. Here is it. I'll copy this about details. I want this about details to occupy 50% width, okay. Paste that right here. I'll give this a width. I'll give it 50%. I'll save that. I'm gonna head back to the web. We're going to start this about container. This about details is going to occupy up to this point. Alright, cool. Now we're gonna target this paragraph tag in here. So I'll just copy up to this point. I'll paste that right here. Paste that underneath here. Then I'll give this a color, first of all, of light gray. We're gonna add a padding, top and bottom 10 pixels, left and right 0, and line height I'll give it 30 pixels. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. You can see this paragraph tag is completely styled, but I want a margin between the paragraph tag and this call to action button underneath it. So I'll give the paragraph tag a margin bottom. I use 50 pixels. I'll save that. And that's going to add a margin between the paragraph tag and this call to action button right here. So next we're going to style this anchor tag, this lemon anchor tag, this call to action button right here. So I head back to my style.css file. I'll just copy that class, and I've not added a class to it. I'll give it a class of CTA button, which is basically call to action button. So I'll just copy this call to action button. I'll head to my style.css file. And this is going to be a general style, so I'll just paste that right here. First of all, we're going to give this a text decoration of none, a background color of primary, a color of white. We'll add a padding, top and bottom. The padding is going to be 10 pixels, left and right 20 pixels. Border radius, we're going to give it 10 pixels. We'll give the text in the font size of 1.2 rem, a font weight of 500. Then we'll give it a cursor of pointer and an outline of none, just in case we add this class to a button, okay. I'll save that. When I head back to the web page, you can see this call to action button is completely styled right now. But I want to actually increase the margin between this span and this icon right here. So I just down here, since it's CTA button, call to action button, then target the anchor tag. I'll give the anchor tag a margin left of 10 pixels. I'll save that. And that's going to add a margin between the anchor tag and this span right here, the icon and the span right here. And when we hover on this, I want to add a hover effect. So I'll just down here, I'm going to say dot CTA button on hover. I want to add style to the anchor, the icon in there. I want to give the icon a margin left of 30 pixels. That way, when we hover on this link, it's going to expand. You can see that expansion right there. And to make the effect smoother, I'll add a transition to the icon. I'll give the icon a transition our 0.6 seconds is in out. I'll save that. And when we hover on this, you can see that smooth transition right there. And next, you have to actually ensure this about section is actually responsive. When we go to our developer tool, you're going to know this is highly, this is highly unresponsive. Okay, so let's start ensuring this is actually responsive. We'll just trace where it starts to get unresponsive. So I'll go to responsive, I'll expand the screen, scroll down, then I'll just trace where it starts to get unresponsive. So for screen size less than 768 pixels, that's where we're going to start applying media queries for this. Okay, so first off, I want to use the padding on the left hand side and the right hand side. So I'll go to my style.css file, I'll look for that class right here, this about section. I'll copy this, I'll go to my responsive.css. Now I'm going to apply this size for 768 pixels, so I'll paste that right here. I'll give this a padding top and bottom. I'm still going to have a padding of 40 pixels, then left and right is going to have a padding of 0. I'll save that. When I head back to the web, you're going to notice that it actually expands. The padding on the left and the right hand side has actually reduced. And also, we want to give this about details a width of 100%. Remember that we gave it a width of 50% initially, this width of 50%. So we'll just copy this. I'll go to my responsive CSS. I'll paste that right here. Now give this a width. This time I'm going to give it 100%. I'll save that. Yeah, this looks really good. That's actually all. Let's check this on iPhone 12 Pro. Yeah, this actually looks good on mobile phones. And with that, we've basically completed the about section. Okay, so next we're going to start working on the latest article section right here. We're going to have the latest blog of this website. So I'll go back to my index.html file, head back to the index.html file. I'll just wrap up this about section. I'll create another section underneath the about section. And this section is going to have a class of article section. And inside this section, we're going to have a div. It's going to have a class of articles container. And inside this articles container, first of all, we're going to have a header. So I just copy the header from here. I'll paste that right here. Paste that right here. Then instead of about us, I'm going to say latest articles. Okay, save that. When I head back to the web page, you can see that item right here, and we have to get rid of that color of white we gave to it. We have to get rid of that color of white. Yeah, you can see it right here. After this header div, I'll create another div. This div is going to have a class of articles. And inside this div, first of all, we're going to have an image in there. And this particular one is going to go into the images folder and it's going to point to post1.jpg. And the author is going to be post. Or let me just use blog post. After this image, I'm going to have a div underneath it. This div is going to have a class of article details. Then inside this div, I'm going to have an h3 tag. This particular one is going to have this text in there capturing the words through my lens. And after that, we're going to have a paragraph tag, which is going to have this paragraph in there. I just format the document. And after this paragraph tag, I'm going to have a div. And this div is going to have a class of button container. And inside this div, we're going to have firstly have a link in there that is not going to go anywhere, and it's simply going to say read more. And these items are supposed to be wrapped inside a div, so I just cut that off, create a div. This div is going to have a class of article, which is going to be each of the blog posts that we're actually previewing on the home page. Paste that right here. Then we'll just close this up and drag this down twice. I want 3 of this article in the home page. So I'll see 1, 2. Okay, I'll open this up. This second one is going to say post2.jpg. The h3 tag is simply going to say my mountain adventure. And as for the paragraph tag, I'll paste this right here. Okay, I'll scroll down. The next h2 is going to have this right here. And the paragraph tag is simply going to be this. I'll save that. When I head back to the web page, you're going to notice those items we just added right here. And let's start actually applying styles to them. So I just scroll up, copy this class name right here. I'll head to my style of CSS file. I'll paste that right here. I'll comment that off. Then I'll paste that underneath here. Okay. We're going to give this a padding. Top and bottom 40 pixels, left and right 0. Then I'm going to add a background to it, a background of light gray. Next, we're going to target the articles container. So now you'll see .articles section. Then I'll just copy that articles container class. I'll copy this. I'll paste that right here. We'll give this a maximum width of 1200 pixels, a width of 90%, and a margin of auto. Now we're going to target the articles container. Okay, so I'll paste that right here. I'll say .articles. And for the articles container, I want to give them a display of grid, a grid template columns of repeats, auto, fits, min, max, 300 pixels, 1 FR. Then we're going to add a gap of 30 pixels between each of the item. Okay, and I'll copy this again. I'll paste that right here. Now I want to target each of the articles. So I'll say .article. I'll give them a background color of white. Then we're going to add a box shadow to them. Box shadow of 0, 2 pixels, 4 pixels, RGB 0, 0, 0. Then we'll paste the 0.1. Then we're going to add a border radius of 10 pixels. So now we have to target the image too. So I just copy this, I'll paste that underneath here. I just target the image in there. I give the image. Now we already told the container, we already placed the items in a grid display. Okay, so just give the image a width of 100%. I just occupy 100% of your grid container. I give it a width of 100%. We give it a height of 250 pixels, and lastly, an object fit. I'll use cover. I'll save that. When I head back to the web page, you can see those items right here, and the image is actually still, and the article section is looking really good. And you can see the box shadow we applied to each of these cards right here. So next, we're going to style these items underneath this image. Okay, I'll copy this, I'll paste that underneath here. Now just target that class that wraps around those items, which is the article this class. I'll copy this class, paste that right here. First of all, just give this a padding of 20 pixels to add a padding around the items. Okay, then lastly, I'll give it a color of dark gray. I want to style the h3, so I'll just copy this, paste that underneath here. I'll target the h3 tag in there. For the h3, we're going to give it a font size of 1.8 rem, then a margin bottom of 10 pixels. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. You're going to notice that these h3 tags actually start, and there's a margin at the bottom of it. Now the peak tags are already looking good. So next, we're going to style this call to action button. Remember, we already created a general class for our call to action button. So just apply that class right here. So I'll go to my index.html file. So each of these buttons, I'm going to add a class of CTA button, which is basically call to action button. So I just copy that, I'll paste that on this other anchor tag, and I'll paste that right here to save that. Head back to the web page. You can see that those styles have been applied to that button. The general CTA button has been applied to it, and we have to add a margin. Remember, we wrapped it in a container. That's the reason why I wrapped it inside a container. I wrapped it inside a container of button container. So we have to target that container. Okay, so I'll just go to my style of CSS file. I'll copy up to this point. I'll paste that right here. Then I'll just copy this button container class. Paste that right here. Then I'll give the button container a margin top and bottom of 30 pixels, left and right 0. Save that. Head back to the web page. You can see that margin has been applied to this button. Okay, margin 20 pixels at the top, 30 pixels at the bottom. So we are done with this. We just have to ensure this is responsive. So I just go to my developer tools. Now by default, these are already responsive because we'll place them in a grid display. So all we have to do is actually reduce the font size of this text for mobile devices. Okay, so I'll go to my style of CSS. So I'll just copy this. I add to my responsive of CSS for mobile devices. As I want to apply the styles, I'll just give this font size. Remember, I gave it a font size of 1.8 rem initially. I'll just reduce that to, I'll use that to 1.5 rem. I'll paste that right here again, but this time I'll target the paragraph tag. I'll give the paragraph tag a font size of 0.95 rem. Save that. Yeah. Okay. And with that, we are done with the latest articles section. So next, we're going to start working on the contact us section. For the contact us section, we're going to have this left hand side right here. We're going to have this input. We have this right hand side. We have this contact details. Then below that, we're going to have this map right here. Let's start working on it. So I'll go back to my index.html file. I'll just wrap up this section. I'll wrap up this section. Then I'll create another section. This section is going to have a class of contacts section. Then we just get that header from this other article section. Just get this header right here. I'll paste that right here. And I'll change this to let's get in touch. Now after this div, I'll create another div. And this div, we're going to add a class of contacts container. And inside this contacts container, we're going to have two items in it, two containers. First of all, we're going to have the form. Sorry, the form. I'll get rid of this. We don't need this for this project. And this form is going to have a class of form container. And after that, we have another container. And this one is going to have a class of contacts details. And inside this form container, we're going to have a div that's going to have a class of input container. And inside this input container, we're going to have an input in there. And this is going to be of type text, and the placeholder is going to simply say your name. I'll just drag this down multiple times. 1, 2. The second one is simply going to say your email. Then this other last one is going to be a test area. That's going to have a placeholder, of your message. After that, we're going to have another div. And this div is going to have a class of button container. And inside this button container, we're going to have a button in there. And this button is simply going to say send message. Next, inside this contact details, we're going to have a div, create a div in there. The div is going to have a class of info. And inside this info container, first of all, we have a h3 tag there. This first one is simply going to say address. And after that, we're going to have a paragraph tag, and we're going to paste in the paragraph right here, the address. Now I'll drag this down multiple times. 1, 2. The second one, h3 tag, is going to say email. And for the email, we just use contacts at gobeyond.com. Then for the last h3 tag, we're going to have phone. And for the phone number, we just paste in this phone right here. I'll save that. Now when I head back to the web page, I'll just scroll down. You can see those items we just added right here. Now we have to actually start applying styles to them. So I just copy the class name, the contact section class name. I'll copy this. I'll head over to my style of CSS file. Just scroll down, paste that right here. First of all, as usual, I'm going to comment it so we know that these are the styles for the contact section. give the contact section a padding, top and bottom of 50 pixels, left and right 0, a maximum width of 1200 pixels, a width of 90%, and a margin of auto. Then now I'm going to style the container, the contact container. So say dot contact section, then dot. I'll copy that class as this class, right? This contact container class. Alright, so my style says where paste that right here. I'll give this a display of flex because I want the form container and the DTS container to be arranged side by side. Okay, so I'll give them a display of flex. I'm going to add a gap between them of 50 pixels. I'll save that. I'm going to head back to the web page. You can see that they are now arranged side by side. Okay, so next we want each of them to occupy equal space. We're going to give each of these container a flex of 1. So I just copy this. I'll paste that right here. Then I'll target the form container. Just copy the form container class. I'll copy that. I'll paste that right here. And I'll give the form container a flex of 1. Then also I'll do the same thing for the DTS container. I'll paste that right here. Copy the class name, the contact DTS class. Right to my style of CSS, so I'll paste that right here. Then I just give this a flex of 1. I'll save that. And when I head back to the web, you're going to notice that they are going to occupy equal space. Okay, and to actually see where they are occupying, I just give them a background color for now. I'll give this a background color of red. Then I'll give this a background color of blue. Save that. Head back to the web page. You can notice that you can actually see the area each of them are occupying. They are occupying 50% equal space in the contact container. Okay, get rid of these background colors. So next we're going to start styling the inputs. Okay, so I'll go back to my style of CSS. So I'll just copy this, I'll paste that right here, and I'll target the input container. So I'll just copy that class from my index.html file, input container, paste that right here, and I'll target the input in there. Now I want this input to have a width of 100%, a margin bottom of 20 pixels, a height of 50 pixels. We give it a padding of 0 top and bottom, 15 pixels left and right. Outline, we're going to give it none. Color of dark gray. And lastly, a border of 1 pixel solid light gray. Okay, I'll save that. And when I head back to the web page, you're going to notice that these first two inputs are actually styled, but the text area is not styled. Okay, that's because we are targeting only the input, so we have to target the text area too. So we just copy this, we paste that right here. That we're going to just group these styles together so that they can share these styles and we'll target the text area. Okay, I'll save that. Now when I head back to the web page, I'm going to notice that the text area is now actually styled. And the border of our input is too faint. I cannot actually see it properly, so I'll just change the border color. Instead of this color, I'll just get rid of this. I'll just use light gray. I'll save that. Yeah, I can actually see it better this way. Then I'll just add a border radius to the input. I'll give the input a border radius of 7 pixels. Now the edges are now going to be curved. Okay, cool. Now we have to add unique styles to the text area because the text area right now looks really ugly. Okay, so we have to add unique styles to it. So I just copy the text area, copy this right here, copy up to this point. I'll paste that right here. First off, I want to give the text area a height of 150 pixels. I'll give it a resize of none. Now the reason I'm giving it a resize of none so that we cannot actually do this with the text area. I cannot expand and reduce the size of the text area. That's why I'm giving it a resize of none. Then I'm going to add a padding to this text area. Padding top and bottom of 10 pixels, left and right 15 pixels. I'll save that. I want to head back to the web page. I'll just refresh the web page and you can see this text area is completely styled and it looks really good. So next we're going to style this button. Now we don't have to style this button because we already created a general call to action button class. So I'll just go to my index.html file. Yeah, I can just add a class of CTA button. I'll save that. Head back to the web page and you can see that style has been applied. And we have borders around this button. Let me just get rid of that. So I'll go to my style.css file. I'll give this border. Didn't get rid of the borders. When this is applied to a button, I want it to have a border of none. Save that. Yeah, we don't have that border anymore. So let's style this info section, okay? So I'll go back to my style.css file. Just scroll up. Down here, I'm going to say .contact section. I'll copy that class. That contact details class. I'll copy this. I'll paste that right here. I just target the info container in there. .info. That's the info container that wraps around these items. Okay, this h3 tag and this paragraph tag. That's the info container I'm targeting. We'll give this a margin bottom of 30 pixels and a color of dark gray. Then I'm going to target the h3 tag, so I'll just copy this. I'll paste that right here as the h3 tag inside this info container. I'll simply just give it a margin bottom of 5 pixels. I'll save that. When I head back to the web page, you can see that this style has been applied and these info details, these details are looking really good. Next, I'm going to add the icons that are going to be underneath this, okay? I'm going to add some icons underneath it. So I'll go back to my index.html file. Underneath this div right here, I'll create another div. This div is going to have a class of social icons. Inside the social icons container, we'll create an anchor tag. And this anchor tag is not going to go anywhere. And inside this anchor tag, we're going to have an icon in there. The first icon is going to have a class of Facebook F. Now just drag that down multiple times. 1, 2, 3. The second one is going to have a class of Instagram. The third one is going to have a class of Twitter. Then the last one is going to have a class of YouTube. Save that. I'm going to head back to the web page. You're going to see we have those icons right here. So let's actually apply styles to them. So I'll copy this class name right here. I'll copy this. I'll head to my style.css file. Down here, I'm going to say .contact section, .contact details, and I'll paste that right here. I'll just give this a display of flex. Then I'll add a gap of 10 pixels between the icons. Okay, save that. Now you're going to understand these icons now have a little bit of gap between them. So let's style the individual icons now. So I'll copy this, paste that underneath here. I'll just target the anchor tag inside the icon. First of all, I'll give it a display of block so I can apply width and height to it. So I'll give it a width of 40 pixels, a height of 40 pixels, border radius of 50%. I want it to be actually circular. Then I'll add a background of dark gray. I'll also give it a display of grid, and I'll place items of center to ensure that the icons are actually at the center. Save that. I want to head back to the web. You can see the icons right here. So we have to actually style the icons inside this anchor tag. So I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll target the icon in there. Sorry, the icon. I'll simply just give the icon the color of white. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. You can see these icons are actually looking good. And when we zoom this out, you can see that little underline underneath these icons. Okay, so that's because the text decoration is still underlined. So just add a text decoration. I'm going to give it none. I'll save that. And that's going to get rid of that underline underneath these icons. Okay. And lastly, for this contact section, I'm going to add our map. Okay. So I'll go to my index.html file. I'll wrap up this contact container. And now I'll create a div. And inside this div, right, this is where we're going to add our map. Okay. So I'm going to go get our map. So I'll go to maps.google.com. map.google.com. That's going to bring me right here, and right here you can actually search for whatever location you want. I'll just use this New York location, this New York, US. I'll just click on that location. whatever location you want, you can search for it here. You can actually get a map that's going to point to that location for you. Okay, then we're going to go to share, then share, we'll just go to embed a map, then we'll copy the HTML. So I'll head back to my project and I'll paste that code right here. And you can see right now that this map has a width of 600 and a height of 450 pixels. So I'll save that. When we return back to the web page, I'll just go back to my project. You can see that map right here. But we want to apply our own width and height to this map. So I'll go back to the index.html file. I'll give this map a height of 500. Then for the width, I'm going to give it 100%. I basically want it to occupy the entire row. Okay. Now return back, you can see it's going to occupy up to the end right here. But the map is too close to this contact container, so I just add a margin bottom to this contact container. So I'll go to my style.css file. Where is that contact container? Yeah, I'll give this a margin bottom of 30 pixels. Save that. There's a margin between this and this. Okay. So now we have to ensure this contact section is responsive. So I'll go to my developer 2. I won't go to our developer 2. I'm going to notice that this is highly unresponsive. Okay. Now I'm going to head to responsive and trace where it starts to get unresponsive. And I'll just check right here. And you're going to notice that just when it goes less than 768 pixels, the items of this contact form start to get really tight. Okay. So what we are going to do, maybe I'll give this a display of flex. So we are going to give this we want this to be arranged vertically. Now I don't want them to be arranged horizontally anymore. So we just go to I'll give this a display of flex. So I'll copy this. I'll head to my responsive.css. So I'll paste that right here under 768 pixels. I'll give it a flex direction. I'll give it reverse column reverse. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, when we go less than 768 pixels, you're going to notice that. Let me expand this a bit. I'm going to say when we go less than 768 pixels, it's going to actually be reverse in the whole reverse in a column basis. Okay. Now the reason I gave it a reverse column is because if I gave it a column, remember that these form container is the first item, while this one is the second item. If I give it a flex direction of column, this one is going to be at the top, then this one is going to be at the bottom, but I want these contact details to be at the top. Okay, so when we go less than that, you're going to notice that this is going to be at the top because I give it a flex direction of reverse column. And it actually looks good now on mobile, so I'll just go to iPhone 12 Pro. Yeah, looks really good on mobile devices. And with that, we are done with the contact section. So let's quickly just work on the footer. So next, we're going to work on this little footer that's going to say copyright 2025 Eggbot Tech YouTube channel. So I head back to my index.html file. I'll just wrap up this section, this contact section. Then underneath this contact section, I'll create a footer. And inside this footer, I'm going to have a p tag. This p tag is going to have this in there, copyright 2025 Eggbot Tech YouTube channel. I'll save that. Then I'll head to my style.css file to apply some styles to this. So just scroll down. Now I want to say footer. I'll give this a padding. Top and bottom, I'm going to give it a padding of 50 pixels. Left and right, 30 pixels. We'll give it a background color of dark gray, a text align of center, and lastly, a color of white. I'll save that. Now when I head back to the web page, I'll just scroll down. You can see that footer right here inside of our web page, and it's completely styled. So next, we just have to work on the navigation. When we click on Explore, we're going to go to the Explore section. We'll click on Articles, take us to the Articles section, okay? So I'll go to my index.html file. Just open this up. Now, in my navigation bar, I'm going to say this anchor tag is going to take me to the Home section. When I click on it, this Explore is going to take me to the Explore section. This is going to take me to the Articles section. This will take me to the About section. This will take me to the Contact section. Okay, now to actually connect each section to the links, we have to actually add unique ID to them. For this one, it's going to have an ID that's going to match. It's going to have an ID that's going to match this home name we gave to it right here. So I'll copy that, I'll paste that right here, I'm going to do the same thing for the west of the section. So I'll wrap this up. I'll give this an ID of explore. Okay, I'll give this an ID of about. I'll give this an ID of articles. And also I'll give this an ID of contacts. Okay, and when I save this and go to the web page, when I click on explore, it's going to bring me to the explore section. When I click on articles, it's going to bring me to the articles section. So we just have to add a smooth scroll behavior. So I'll go to my style of CSS, I'll scroll the way up. I'll add a smooth behavior to the HTML document. So I'll say HTML scroll behavior. I want it to be smooth. I'll save that. And when I head back to the web page, when I click on about, it's going to scroll to the about. When I click on contact, it's going to scroll to the contact section. And with that, we are completely done with the website. Now, if you enjoy this project build, smash on the like button and leave a comment below. It's going to help the YouTube algorithm to push this content to more people who are going to find it helpful. And just basically consider it as a very little way of you supporting the channel. And lastly, if you've not subscribed, ensure you do that and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on the next project we're going to build together on this channel. I'll see you in the next video.